Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're plunging into a topic that touches all of us, really, whether we realize it or not, the ever present threat of cybersecurity risks. We've taken a really close look at a range of information covering, well, everything from major data breaches, the tactics criminals use, how organizations gear up to defend themselves and respond when the worst happens, and perhaps most importantly, what you can do right now to protect your own sensitive information. It's a deep dive into the digital landscape, where the lines between online threats and real-world consequences are definitely blurring.
That's a perfect way to put it. What's absolutely critical to understand right from the outset is that cybersecurity has moved far beyond being just a technical problem for IT departments. When we look at sectors handling deeply personal information like healthcare, a cyber incident can have incredibly serious tangible impacts. We're talking about disruptions to patient care, the exposure of health records, social security numbers, data points that, well, they can lead to devastating consequences for individuals. We've really pulled apart different pieces of information here to give you a comprehensive picture of this evolving threat.
Yeah, and we're going to unpack the specific strategies organizations are encouraged to adopt. We're drawing on examples that might seem niche, maybe like advice for eye care practices, but they contain universal principles for securing sensitive data. We'll walk through a compelling real-world case study of a healthcare attack just to see how it actually plays out. And we'll explore the structured approach organizations use to plan for these emergencies, from the moment an attack is detected right through to recovery. And finally, we'll arm you with practical steps you can take yourself and look at what identity theft protection services really offer if your information gets compromised.
Right. It's really about building a layered defense and preparedness model, recognizing the threat, preventing where possible, having a solid plan when prevention fails, and crucially, understanding how to recover both as an organization and, as an individual.
And before we embark on this deep dive, we want to take a moment to express our sincere thanks to our sponsor, Stonefly. As we get into the nuts and bolts of ransomware, data loss, and the absolute necessity of being prepared, you'll see just how fundamental secure data storage, robust backup strategies, and effective disaster recovery truly are. Stonefly stands out as a leader in enterprise storage, backup and disaster recovery, AI storage, and cloud solutions. If the kind of threats we're discussing have you thinking about your own data resilience, and honestly, they should. Stonefly offers secure, ransomware-proof storage through air-gapped and immutable solutions. You can learn more and see their capabilities firsthand by contacting sales at stonefly.com to schedule a demo. It's a powerful reminder that having a strong foundation for your data is, well, one of the most critical defenses against the very threats we're about to explore. All right, let's unpack this. Okay, so really ground this conversation in reality and, understand the stakes. Let's start with a concrete example, one that highlights just how impactful these attacks can be. We looked closely at what happened at Asheville Eye Associates, an eye care center located in North Carolina. They experienced a significant data breach that affected, well, thousands of their patients.
Yeah. This case offers a really clear and unfortunately pretty common illustration of the life cycle of a modern cyber attack. The initial intrusion, it was detected back in November of 2024. What happened was basically a malicious actor managed to gain access to their network infrastructure and critically began exfiltrating or, stealing files containing sensitive data.
And here's a detail that really underscores the complexity and, frankly, the long-term nature of these incidents. While the initial attack was identified relatively quickly back in November 2024, the extensive investigation needed to figure out precisely what specific data was stolen and who was affected. Well, that dragged on for months. It finally concluded in April of 2025. Think about that. That's nearly 5 months of intense forensic work, just trying to piece together the scope of the damage. And for the patients whose data was potentially involved, that's 5 months of anxious uncertainty, right? Wondering if their most personal information was compromised.
Exactly. And that delay isn't necessarily incompetence. It really speaks to the often sophisticated nature of these intrusions and just the sheer volume of data that needs to be analyzed forensically. And the information that was ultimately found to be compromised in this case, well, it really hits home. It included names, home addresses, social security numbers, incredibly sensitive treatment details related to their eye care, and health insurance information. When you combine health data with identifiers like social security numbers, you essentially create a highly valuable package for criminals, enabling all sorts of fraud.
Wow. And the number of people initially thought to be affected was quite large, wasn't it? Reports indicate that when they first notified the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, that was in January, the number was over 193,000 individuals potentially impacted.
Yeah.
Then that number was updated to over 204,000.
That's right. And ultimately, by the time they were able to complete their investigation and send out those formal notification letters, to those whose data was confirmed to have been exposed, that number was refined down to around 147,000 people. This fluctuation in the reported numbers throughout the incident timeline isn't unusual. It simply reflects the challenging, sort of iterative process of forensic investigation and identifying the exact individuals impacted within a large data set after a breach like this.
Now, here's where it gets really interesting and maybe a little alarming when we look at who claimed responsibility for this specific attack. It was attributed to a group known as the DragonForce ransomware gang.
Ah, DragonForce. They're a fascinating, albeit, concerning example of this evolving landscape of cybercrime groups. They emerged relatively recently, back in 2023, and they operate using a ransomware-as-a-service model, RaaS, basically.
RaaS, so like a franchise for cybercrime.
Pretty much, yeah. Think of it like that. The core group develops and maintains the ransomware tools and the infrastructure, and then affiliates, who are essentially cybercriminal entrepreneurs, they rent or license these tools to carry out attacks. The profits are then typically split between the core group and the affiliates.
That RaaS model must allow them to scale their operations incredibly quickly, right? They don't have to do all the attacks themselves.
Precisely. They just provide the platform. And interestingly, initially, DragonForce seemed to have some politically motivated targets, attacking entities based on their ideological stance. But we've seen a pretty clear pivot in their activities. They've become predominantly focused on financially motivated extortion campaigns. They've quickly become a significant and unfortunately pretty effective player in the global ransomware scene.
And their tactics sound particularly aggressive. The information points to them using a dual-extortion strategy.
Ah, yes. Dual extortion. This is a critical evolution in ransomware attacks. It means they don't just rely on the traditional method, encrypting a victim's data and demanding payment for the decryption key. They add a second layer of pressure. They first steal or exfiltrate a copy of the victim's sensitive data before they encrypt it.
Okay, so they take it first.
Right. Then they threaten to publicly leak this stolen data if the ransom isn't paid.
Wow. So even if an organization has good backups, maybe they can restore their systems without the decryption key. They still face this huge pressure of having sensitive customer or patient data publicly exposed. That's the non-disclosure part.
Exactly. And that second layer, the data leak threat, it's often incredibly effective at forcing victims' hands, especially in sectors like healthcare, where data privacy is paramount and regulated by laws like IPA here in the U.S. In the Asheville Eye case, the information we reviewed indicates the reported ransom demand was a staggering $7 million.
$7 million.
Mm-hmm. And that demand wasn't just for the decryption key. It was specifically for the non-disclosure and deletion of the stolen data, which included that classified medical information and patient contact details.
And the decision Asheville Eye Associates made, according to the information we have, was not to pay that $7 million ransom.
Correct. And the reported consequence of that decision, based on what we've seen, was that the stolen patient data was then allegedly uploaded to an encrypted .onion blog website. These sites are typically hosted on the dark web and associated with ransomware groups for the express purpose of leaking data when victims don't comply with extortion demands.
This really brings it full circle back to the individual, you, the listener. This wasn't just some corporate IT disaster. The information highlights the very real human impact. For instance, it mentions that patients whose data was exposed filed a class action lawsuit. They alleged that the practice hadn't implemented reasonable security procedures to properly safeguard their private health information.
Right.
That really underscores the feeling of violation and vulnerability people experience when their most personal data, linked to their identity, gets exposed and potentially spread across the dark web. As part of their response and, to help mitigate this, Asheville Eye Associates did offer affected individuals 12 months of free identity theft protection services, which is a pretty common step organizations take after a breach of this nature.
So, having seen a clear example of these devastating consequences, let's shift our focus a bit from what happened to how do organizations try to prevent this from happening in the first place. Okay. We've gathered some essential cybersecurity tips, drawing partly from advice specifically tailored for eye care practices, but honestly, these principles are universal. They are crucial steps for any organization handling sensitive data, and frankly, they contain valuable lessons for you in managing your own personal digital security.
It's interesting because when we think of cyber attacks, we often picture some, mastermind hacker in a dark room. But the information we reviewed points to a much more common culprit, just simple human error. One survey found that a significant percentage of small medical practices, 1 in 4, had experienced a data breach. That's huge.
Yeah.
And remarkably, nearly half of those breaches, 49%, were attributed to human error. That statistic alone is really eye-opening.
It absolutely is. It tells us that, the most sophisticated firewalls and intrusion detection systems can sometimes be bypassed by something as simple as a single click on the wrong link. This highlights why staff education is perhaps the single most crucial preventative measure. Organizations need to constantly educate their personnel about the latest threats, especially phishing scams, which remain incredibly effective. Regular training sessions, maybe weekly or monthly updates, are vital, and interactive methods like mock phishing simulations, they're excellent.
Mock phishing, so sending fake bad emails to see who clicks.
Exactly. Realistic fake phishing emails are sent to employees. It's a great tool to teach them how to spot and correctly report suspicious communications without, falling victim.
Because those phishing attempts are getting incredibly convincing, right? They can look exactly like an email from your bank, or a shipping notification, or even someone you work with.
They are. Attackers invest heavily in making them appear legitimate. So, beyond the human element, the information emphasizes the absolute necessity of secure data storage and robust backups. Utilizing cloud-based storage solutions can offer enhanced security features, especially those that include built-in disaster recovery capabilities. Implementing real-time backups is critical. For instance, one system mentioned maintains real-time backups of the last 30 days of data, promising potential recovery within, say, 2 to 8 hours after a system failure or attack. And here's a critical point, often implied in incident response planning. Backups must be stored securely, ideally on a system that is disconnected from the primary network. Air-gapped, basically.
Air-gapped.
Disconnected, yes. This ensures that if ransomware encrypts your main systems, your backups remain pristine and available for recovery.
That's a fundamental point, because if your backups are just another network drive, the ransomware hits those too, and then you're really stuck.
Exactly right. It's about isolating that last line of defense. Another fundamental security layer that every organization, and honestly every individual should employ, is multi-factor authentication, or MFA.
MFA.
Most online services now offer this. MFA requires a second step beyond just a password to verify your identity when you log in. This could be a code sent to your phone, maybe a prompt on an authenticator app, or answering security questions. Implementing MFA makes it extremely difficult, as they put it, for unauthorized users to gain access, even if they somehow get your password. In some systems, particularly those accessing sensitive patient records, MFA is actually becoming a mandatory requirement.
And this isn't just for organizations, like you said earlier. This is a huge one for personal accounts, too. If your bank, your email, social media offers MFA, turning it on is one of the simplest, most effective things you can do.
Absolutely. It significantly raises the bar for attackers. And coupled with MFA is the age-old advice about strong passwords. The guidance is consistent. Use a complex mix of uppercase and lowercase letters, symbols, and numbers. The longer and more complex, the exponentially harder it is for attackers to guess or crack through brute force. Using online password generators can help create truly random, strong passwords. And managing all these complex passwords can be overwhelming, which is why using reputable password managers is highly recommended.
Right, password managers.
Yeah, they store your encrypted passwords securely so you don't have to remember them all. Or worse, write them down somewhere.
And keeping them fresh is also important, right? Changing passwords regularly.
Yes, changing passwords periodically, perhaps every 3 months, is a good practice. And critically, if you suspect any account password might have been compromised, you must change it immediately. And change across all services where you might have reused it. Speaking of personnel, deactivating accounts and system access immediately when staff members leave the organization is another vital administrative step. It closes potential backdoors.
Makes sense. And device security seems like another common sense area that just needs constant attention.
It really does. Simple habits, like not leaving mobile devices unattended, even for a moment, and always logging off or locking computers when you step away are essential. On the technical side, keeping all systems, software, and devices updated with the latest security patches is, well, it's non-negotiable. Firewalls and antivirus software need to be kept current with the newest threat definitions. Attackers constantly exploit known vulnerabilities in outdated software, so patching is just a fundamental defense.
And finally, the guidance touches on network security, particularly differentiating between private and public networks, like using Wi-Fi at a coffee shop versus at home.
Yes, exactly. The recommendation is to always favor using a secure private network over public Wi-Fi whenever handling sensitive information. Public Wi-Fi networks are inherently less secure and can be easily intercepted. For organizations, using a static private IP address can add a layer of security by restricting access to their network to a consistent internal online address. This makes it harder for external malicious actors to locate and target them directly.
So a private IP is just internal, and static means it doesn't change.
Right. A private IP is only reachable from within its local network, and a static one doesn't change, which adds stability for security configurations like firewall rules.
These steps, from educating staff and securing data to using strong passwords and updating software, it might seem like a laundry list, but consistently implementing them builds a much stronger defense posture, doesn't it? They reduce the attack surface significantly.
Absolutely. Whether you're running a small business, managing a large organization, or just trying to stay safe online yourself, these practices form the bedrock of cybersecurity resilience.
So we've explored preventative measures, but the unfortunate reality is that incidents can and do happen, even with the best defenses in place. The information we've looked at also delves into how organizations prepare for that worst-case scenario. They actually have plans for what to do after an attack is underway. This introduces a concept called a Coordinated Healthcare Incident Response Plan, or CHIRP, particularly relevant for healthcare entities.
A CHIRP. It's a vital component for any organization, but especially so in healthcare, where the stakes are higher than just data or money. Patient safety can be directly impacted. The information emphasizes that a cyber incident in healthcare isn't isolated to the IT department. It can disrupt clinical operations, affect medical devices, prevent access to patient records, all of which can jeopardize care. So a CHIRP is designed to integrate and synchronize various existing organizational plans, your cybersecurity incident response plan, disaster recovery plan, business continuity plan, even emergency management plans, into one cohesive strategy.
Okay.
It acts as the central hub, basically ensuring everyone is on the same page and working towards common goals during a crisis.
So it's about getting operations, legal, communications, and the clinical staff all working together, not just the IT folks. That seems critical.
Precisely. A truly coordinated response acknowledges that the impact is organization-wide. The CHIP provides the framework, outlining the overall process and how different teams need to communicate and coordinate their efforts, particularly at key transition points between phases of the response.
And the process is broken down into distinct phases, right? Walking through those steps might help clarify the complexity.
Yes, the typical life cycle of an incident response, as outlined, begins with identification. This is the phase where the organization first recognizes that a potentially disruptive cybersecurity incident has occurred. The plan would have predefined criteria for what constitutes a disruptive event severe enough to activate the full response plan.
Like what sort of criteria?
Well, it might include widespread system unavailability, a significant number of devices being infected or down, a credible threat of the incident spreading rapidly, or confirmed data theft that requires immediate drastic actions to contain. Specific roles within the organization are designated to make the call and officially activate the CHRP.
Okay, so once it's identified and the alarm is sounded, what's next?
That moves into the assessment and response phase. Here, the designated response teams, often led by a cybersecurity response governance team, are officially assembled and activated. They conduct initial technical assessments to understand the scope and nature of the attack, and operational assessments to determine the impact on critical business functions and patient care. Initial containment strategies, often temporary or rapidly implemented, are refined. If systems are down, downtime procedures, protocols for continuing critical functions manually or via workarounds are initiated. Initial objectives for the response are established, and preliminary communications, both internally to staff and potentially externally, begin. Command centers are typically set up during this phase to serve as centralized hubs for communication and synchronization.
That sounds incredibly intense, trying to figure out what's happening and start dealing with it all at once. Just chaos management.
It is. It requires clear roles and strong leadership. The next phase is eradication and continuity. The primary goal here is to remove the threat from the affected systems and network, so cleaning malware, decrypting data if possible without paying ransom, or maybe rebuilding systems entirely. This requires validating that the threat has been completely eradicated. System rebuilding and recovery activities kick into high gear. The plan accounts for using interim solutions for critical functions if full system recovery is still some time away. External engagement also expands in this phase. Law enforcement like the FBI, regulatory bodies like HHS Office for Civil Rights for Healthcare, and cyber insurance providers are typically formally involved now. It's also in this phase that an organization might formally revisit and finalize their extortion strategy. The ransom decision. Right. The guidance suggests that executive-level discussions about potential ransom payment should ideally happen before an incident. They need to consider factors like confidence in decryption keys provided by the attacker, the status and integrity of backups, the overall scope of the impact, and a realistic timeline for recovery if the ransom is not paid.
So deciding whether to pay is really a strategic decision that ideally has pre-planned considerations, not just an emotional reaction in the moment.
Exactly. It's a complex calculation with no easy answer, and having discussed the factors beforehand, guided by information on backup status and recovery feasibility, is crucial. Once the threat is gone and systems are coming back online, you move into restoration and recovery.
Okay, bringing everything back to normal operations.
Correct. This phase involves lifting the containment measures that were put in place to stop the spread. Forensic analysis often continues in parallel to fully understand the attack vector and timeline for post-incident learning. Integrations between different systems that might have been disconnected or impacted are reactivated. The goal is a phased return to standard operations. If downtime procedures involve collecting data manually, this is the phase where that data needs to be backloaded into the restored systems. Internal and external communications are updated to reflect progress towards full operational status.
And then, finally, wrapping everything up and hopefully learning from it.
That's the closeout phase. This is critical for long-term resilience. It involves comprehensive planning to mitigate the risks that were identified or exploited during the incident. The entire response process is reviewed in detail, often through structured after-action reviews, or AAR, after-action reviews. They involve analyzing what went well, what didn't, and what lessons were learned. Based on these lessons, all relevant organizational plans, the CHREP itself, disaster recovery, business continuity are updated. For healthcare organizations, this phase also includes handling all privacy and legal inquiries related to the breach, including conducting a formal breach analysis and fulfilling the necessary regulatory notification requirements, like notifying the HHS Office for Civil Rights, typically required within 60 days of discovering a breach involving protected health information, or PHI.
You mentioned synchronization between these phases is really important. Why is getting the timing right so crucial in an incident response? Seems like you just want to go as fast as possible.
Well, you do want to be efficient, but moving prematurely or out of sequence can actually exacerbate the problem or significantly slow down recovery. For example, you absolutely cannot move from eradication to restoration. If the threat hasn't been fully validated as removed, you just immediately get reinfected.
Oh, okay. Makes sense.
Similarly, certain containment actions might interfere with the ability to conduct necessary forensic analysis later if they're not coordinated properly. The plan needs to outline these dependencies. Command centers play a key role here, facilitating the synchronization, ensuring different teams aren't working at cross purposes.
And beyond the internal teams, who else might an organization need to pull in during these phases? You mentioned the FBI and HHS.
Right. A robust plan identifies key external contacts. This might include an incident response partner, which is often a specialized cybersecurity firm. They provide technical expertise for forensics, eradication, recovery. Law enforcement, like the FBI, is often involved, especially in ransomware cases, for criminal investigation and potential threat intelligence sharing. The Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, CISA, that's a government agency providing resources and alerts about current threats. Cyber insurance providers are involved throughout, from guiding response steps to potentially covering costs. State Attorney General offices may require notification depending on the location and data involved. And, as mentioned for healthcare, the HHS Office for Civil Rights, OCR, is the primary regulator for PHI breaches and has specific reporting requirements and timelines.
And sometimes getting control requires really drastic steps. The material touched on containment strategies that sound quite disruptive, like pulling the plug.
They can be, absolutely. If a targeted containment, like just isolating a few infected machines, isn't sufficient, or if the threat is spreading too rapidly, broader measures become necessary. These could include disconnecting the entire organization from the public internet, essentially taking themselves offline to stop external communication by the malware.
Wow.
It might involve disconnecting from vendor or partner networks to prevent the spread outward. Segmenting internal networks, particularly separating critical systems like medical device networks from administrative ones, is a common strategy to limit the scope of an attack. Mass quarantining infected devices is another. And, as we touched on with backups, physically disconnecting backup systems from the network is a critical containment strategy to protect those recovery points. These are serious operational decisions, requiring clear justification and authorization within the incident response plan.
Okay, so we've gone from the attack itself, seeing that real-world case study, to understanding how organizations try to prevent these incidents, and then how they plan to respond when prevention fails. But as that Asheville Eye case clearly showed, the data can still get out. And for you, the individual listener, one of the biggest fears when your personal information is exposed is, well, identity theft.
Absolutely. Identity theft is a direct and serious consequence of data breaches and other cybercrime activities.
Yeah.
It's essentially when someone uses your personal identifying information like your name, social security number, date of birth, financial account numbers without your permission to commit fraud or other crimes.
And how does someone's information typically end up in the wrong hands to begin with? It feels like it could happen in so many ways.
It can. There are several common pathways, and the information we looked at outlines them clearly. Data breaches, like the one we discussed, are a major source. That's where criminals hack into corporate or government databases containing large volumes of personal records. Phishing and spoofing schemes are another incredibly prevalent method. Those are the fraudulent emails, texts, or phone calls designed to trick you into voluntarily handing over sensitive information by pretending to be someone legitimate, like your bank or government agency.
The trickery.
Yeah. Then there are hacked accounts, whether it's your email, social media profiles, or banking login. These can expose a wealth of personal details or provide access to other accounts. Compromised devices are also a risk. Using unsecured public Wi-Fi or falling victim to viruses and malware can allow criminals to install keyloggers or other software to steal your information directly from your computer or phone. And honestly, sometimes it's as simple as criminals going through physical documents or mail that you've discarded improperly. Dumpster diving, basically.
It really does feel like the threats are coming from every angle. The material also breaks down the different kinds of trouble identity theft can cause. It's not just one thing.
No, it's not. Understanding the different types helps highlight the breadth of the risk. Financial identity theft is probably the one most people think of first. This is when someone uses your identity to apply for new credit cards or loans in your name, access your existing bank accounts, make unauthorized purchases, or even file fraudulent tax returns to steal your refund. You might first notice this through strange bills showing up, maybe calls from debt collectors for accounts you didn't open, or receiving confusing letters from the IRS.
That sounds like a massive headache to sort out, just untangling all of that.
It can be an absolute nightmare, requiring extensive effort to untangle your financial life. Then there's medical identity theft. This happens when someone uses your personal information or health insurance details to obtain medical care, prescription drugs, or file false insurance claims in your name.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. You might discover this when you receive bills for services you never received, find unfamiliar entries in your medical records, or get calls from collections agencies related to medical debt that isn't yours. This can even impact your future medical treatment if your records get messed up because of someone else's activity.
And there's also the broader category of online identity theft, right?
Right. This often encompasses the digital methods of information theft we mentioned earlier, data breaches, phishing, hacking accounts. It can lead to various forms of cybercrime losses. The information points to some alarming statistics, like the FBI reporting that total cybercrime losses exceeded $16 billion in 2024.
$16 billion?
Billion, yes. Phishing and spoofing attacks, extortion schemes like ransomware, and data breaches were among the top crime types contributing to that massive figure.
Okay, so with all these potential vulnerabilities and types of theft, what practical steps can you, the listener, take right now, based on what we've learned, to help prevent your identity from being stolen?
Yeah, there are several key prevention habits individuals should adopt. First and foremost, be extremely cautious about phishing attacks. Scrutinize any unsolicited requests for personal or financial information. Never click links or open attachments from suspicious emails or texts. Legitimate organizations rarely ask for sensitive details like passwords or account numbers via email. If in doubt, contact the company directly through their official website or a phone number you know is correct, not one provided in the suspicious message.
So maintain a healthy dose of skepticism. Don't just click.
Absolutely. And related to that, always verify the legitimacy of a website before entering personal information. Check the website's address, the URL for any misspellings or strange characters. Ensure the site uses HTTPS. The ES stands for secure and displays a padlock icon in the address bar. This indicates the connection is encrypted, though it doesn't guarantee the site itself is trustworthy, but it's a good first check.
Mm-hmm. And monitoring your financial footprint seems incredibly important, too, keeping tabs on things.
It is a critical defense. You should monitor your credit history regularly. You are entitled to one free credit report annually from each of the 3 major credit bureaus: Equifax, Experian, and TransUnion. Get these reports. Review them carefully for any accounts or lines of credit you don't recognize. Check for unfamiliar spending activity. If you spot anything suspicious, report it immediately to the credit bureau and your bank or credit card company. Acting quickly is really key to limiting the damage.
And something many of us do every day without thinking: social media. You mentioned that earlier.
Yes, be mindful of oversharing on social media. Avoid posting sensitive personal details like your full birth date, your home address, or even the full names of your children. Criminals can piece together information from multiple sources to build a profile for identity theft or targeted scams. And here's a really fundamental pro tip from the information we reviewed. Create unique, strong passwords for each online account.
Unique for each account.
Yes. Reusing the same password or slight variations across multiple websites is incredibly risky. If one of those sites suffers a data breach and attackers get your username and password, they can potentially access many of your other accounts. A password manager, again, can be a great tool here to help you use and store unique, complex passwords without having to remember dozens of them.
So unique passwords for everything. That's a non-negotiable baseline, really. Given the complexity, though, and the sheer volume of places your information might be compromised, the idea of using identity theft protection services comes up. What exactly are these services and how do they actually help?
Okay, so based on a review, identity theft protection services are designed to proactively monitor various places where your personal information might be misused. They essentially act as watchdogs. They search for signs of your identity being used. This could include monitoring the dark web where stolen data is often traded, looking for your information in court records, checking for applications for new credit cards, loans, or utilities in your name, or monitoring changes of address associated with your identity.
So they're looking in places you probably wouldn't or maybe even couldn't easily check yourself all the time?
Exactly. They cast a much wider net. Many of these services also include credit monitoring, ideally across all 3 major credit bureaus: Equifax, Experian, and TransUnion. They'll alert you quickly to significant changes or inquiries on your credit report, which can be an early sign of fraudulent activity. Some services bundle additional online safety tools, things like antivirus software, virtual private networks, VPNs for secure online browsing, or password managers. And a really significant benefit they offer is resolution services. If your identity is stolen, navigating the process of contacting banks, credit bureaus, government agencies, it's incredibly complex and time-consuming to report the fraud and recover your identity.
Yeah, sounds overwhelming.
It can be. These services typically have dedicated case managers or investigators who can guide you through or even handle many of these steps on your behalf.
And they often come with identity theft insurance, too, right?
Yes, that's a common component. Identity theft insurance is designed to help cover costs associated with recovering your identity. This can include legal fees, fees for certified mail, maybe lost wages from time spent resolving the issue, and sometimes even reimbursement for stolen funds up to a certain limit. The information we looked at suggests aiming for services that offer at least $1 million in identity theft insurance coverage per plan.
Okay, $1 million. That naturally leads to the big question. Is paying for one of these services really worth it, or can you just kind of do it yourself?
That's a great question, and the answer often depends on your personal risk tolerance and how much time and effort you're willing to commit. The information acknowledges that yes, some key protective steps can be done for free. You can check your credit reports annually for free from annualcreditreport.com. And you can place a credit freeze on your files with the credit bureaus, which prevents new credit from being opened in your name without you unfreezing it.
Credit freezes, right. Those are free now.
They are. And they're powerful free tools. However, identity theft protection services bundle continuous monitoring across a much broader range of potential threats than you could realistically do yourself. And they provide that crucial resolution support and insurance backing. If you're already paying for separate online safety tools like a VPN or premium antivirus, a comprehensive identity theft protection service that bundles these features might actually offer a cost-effective way to get a higher overall level of protection and, peace of mind. Plus, as we saw with the Asheville Eye case, if your data is breached by a company, they may offer a period of free identity theft protection service as a form of remediation, so you might get it for free sometimes.
Okay. If someone decides a service is right for them, what should they look for when comparing options? There seem to be a lot out there.
Yeah, there are. Key factors to compare, as outlined in the material, include confirming they offer significant identity theft insurance coverage, ideally that $1 million mark. Ensure they provide 3 bureau credit monitoring. Some only do 1 or 2, which isn't as comprehensive. Consider if you need an individual or a family plan, compare the pricing, and look for discounts, obviously. And if possible, take advantage of a free trial to see if the service's interface and alerts meet your needs before you commit. The information also mentioned some specific service strengths. Just as examples, Oro was noted for overall value and features, LifeLock for strong family coverage, ID Watchdog for monitoring non-credit accounts like 401k or HSA, DragonForce for credit monitoring tools, McAfee Plus for bundling ransomware recovery assistance, IDX for its focus on privacy tools, and ID Shield for strong restoration support, potentially using private investigators.
Okay, so different flavors out there. No, presenting these neutrally as examples.
Different strengths, acknowledging neutrality.
And if, despite all the precautions, maybe even having a service, someone discovers their identity has been stolen, what's the first step? Where do they turn?
The information points to identitytheft.gov as an excellent starting point. This website, run by the U.S. Federal Trade Commission, FTC, helps you create a personalized recovery plan. It walks you through the necessary steps, such as contacting the companies where fraud occurred, reporting the incident to the FTC, and filing a police report. As mentioned earlier, having an identity theft protection service with resolution support can be invaluable at this point, as they can assist significantly with navigating these complex and, frankly, very stressful steps.
Okay, so we've really journeyed through the complex world of cybersecurity risks in this deep dive. Wow. We started by looking at a real example like the Asheville Eye Associates breach to understand the tangible impact on individuals and organizations. We explored the critical preventative measures organizations and individuals too should adopt, from employee training and secure backups to strong passwords and MFA. We then looked at the structured, multi-phase process organizations use to plan for and respond to incidents when they occur, highlighting the necessary coordination across different teams and external partners. Finally, we focus back on you, the individual, understanding how identity theft happens and outlining practical steps for prevention and potential recovery, including the role of identity theft protection services. It's a multifaceted challenge, isn't it? Involving technology, human behavior, planning, recovery. But understanding these layers really empowers you to navigate the digital world with greater awareness and, hopefully, resilience.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's clear that cybersecurity is an ongoing commitment, not a one-time fix. Proactive measures, both for organizations safeguarding sensitive data and for individuals protecting their personal information, are essential. And having plans in place for when things go wrong is equally vital in this landscape of constantly evolving threats and tactics. You just have to stay vigilant.
And again, we want to extend our sincere thanks to Stonefly for sponsoring this deep dive. As we've dissected the threats posed by things like ransomware and data breaches and the critical importance of being able to recover effectively, it really underscores the value of having robust, secure data infrastructure. Stonefly is a recognized leader in enterprise storage, backup and disaster recovery, AI storage, and cloud solutions, specifically offering air-gapped and immutable storage solutions designed for secure, ransomware-proof data protection. If you're looking to strengthen your data resilience, you can learn more and schedule a demo by contacting sales@stonefly.com.
Yeah, having that foundation of secure, resilient data storage is truly fundamental to any effective cybersecurity strategy today.
Yeah.
It's not optional.
As we wrap up this deep dive, here's a thought that kind of builds on what we've discussed, particularly that DragonForce example. We noted that groups like DragonForce have shifted from primarily political motivations to financially driven extortion. Given the increasing volume and immense financial value of sensitive data, especially highly personal information like health records and social security numbers, how might this economic incentive continue to shape the specific tactics and targets of cybercrime groups in the coming years? Will we see even more sophisticated targeting of sectors holding valuable personal data? It's definitely something to keep in mind as you continue to engage with the digital world and protect your own information.